His testimony defence witness Dennis Root is here in the audience tonight. Also joining us, CNN contributor and New York Times op-ed columnist Charles Blow and former prosecutor John Q. Kelly. And if you want to join in, you can just tweet me at Piers Morgan. Lots of tweets coming in with lots of opinions. It's dividing America. Dennis Root, let me come to you. You gave this testimony in which you basically implied that the only course of action that was left open to George Zimmerman was to take out his gun and shoot Trayvon Martin. Why did you believe that so strongly?
You take into consideration everything you learn about an individual. To say there are additional options that are available to a person is taking into consideration whether they have fighting skills, whether they have any other things. Screaming for help was an option which he did utilize if you believe that he was the one screaming on the recording. To be asked what other options there are, and the gentleman says that, I have other options, everybody else does. I have 22 years of training behind me. Mr. Zimmerman did not. So to say what options he had physical skills.
But he's the older guy, he's a bigger guy. It's a fight, there are no weapons other than his gun. He's up against a 17-year-old kid who's doesn't know what's going on, he's walking home. Surely there's another option than pulling out a gun and shooting him dead, isn't it?
The main concern that you have is everybody makes the presumption that it's just a 17-year-old kid walking home. None of us,
but that's what he was.
None of us, including myself, know exactly how the altercation began and ended up where it was. The perception that's important is what took place in George Zimmerman's mind at the time he discharged the weapon. And as long as he perceived that he was in imminent peril for great bodily harm or death, he is justified under Florida law in discharging a firearm.
Charles Blow, this does cut to the quick of the whole trial, but so many people feel there must have been another option than just shooting this boy dead.
Right, and to your point, no one knows but Trayvon and George Zimmerman whether or not George Zimmerman exposed a weapon prior to the encounter, and whether or not the struggle may in fact all have been over a weapon. Because what the prosecution was trying to do all day today and part of yesterday was to say it is virtually impossible to retrieve the weapon while you're on the ground. So how is it that the weapon gets drawn? And I think that becomes a crucial point. I thought the prosecution would raise that much earlier. I thought that was a crucial idea, which is how do you get the gun out behind your back, move it over his legs, up to his chest, and fire that weapon. If, in fact, the gun is out prior to the engagement of the physical altercation, then the person who is defending themselves against great bodily harm or death switches from Trayvon Martin from George Zimmerman to Trayvon Martin, and the only person who has testified in this entire case as to whether or not that gun stayed holstered the entire time has been the man who is charged with the murder of Trayvon.
John Q. Kelly, what do you think of that?
It's true. First of all, going through what Zimmerman's options were, one, he could have stayed in the car. Two, he could have left the gun in the car. Third, he could have fallen 30 feet behind him. And we also don't know how the confrontation started. A lot of people assume that Trevor threw a punch that broke or injured his nose. That could have been a headbutt when they collided. Could have been a knee when someone was tackling him. It could have been when they went to the ground together. But I think I agree with the people that are talking right now that that gun had to be drawn. There's no way it came out, got brought up, put in his chest, fired cleanly, one shot during that struggle if he was yelling for help.
There are a lot of things in George Zimmerman's version that I disagree with. Like I said, I suspected the gun was already out. In my mind, there's no way he was going to look at a street sign. He was following to see so he could tell the cops where he was, things like that.
But he didn't intend to shoot Trayvon.
No, I don't think so.
Anybody believes
Somebody
that.
who intends to shoot does not call 911 to report the progress along the way. But here's the thing. What's really relevant is when he gets on the ground. Unless the prosecution can show that he was the aggressor and that he punched Trayvon first and there were no injuries on Trayvon to document that, what's relevant is when he's on the ground, does he have another option to get out? And the prosecution's hands are tied because they don't have the evidence to show otherwise.
That the gun is already out, then that makes you the aggressor because you have the most force in that situation. That switches the dynamic.
But what I believe is my speculation. What you have to show a jury is proof.
It's not evidence.
And the prosecution doesn't have it.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. The state has the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I believe that he would have never gotten out of the car if he didn't have the gun.
That's true.
He would have just never gotten out of the car. Let's be real about about this.
Let me go to an audience member, Damon Jackson, who has a question here, because Damon, you've got a question that's quite pertinent, which is if it was the other way around. Ask your question.
Well, yes, well, the fact is that the only reason that there was an arrest and the only reason that there was a trial is due to a response from the public outcry, national outcry.
That's true.
Okay. I wonder if the roles were reversed, whether or not we would be sitting here having this type of discussion. Totally.
What do you think?
I believe Zimmerman is guilty.
But if the roles have been reversed, if Trayvon
I don't think if the
had
roles
shot
were
dead
reversed,
George
I don't think there would have been the need for a public outcry. Number one, I think Trayvon would have been arrested right off the bat, and I believe he would have been found guilty right off the bat.
I think that to me is the most crucial point about what the public outcry was here. This case is not now, nor has it ever been, about an extraordinary death. People are shot to death, unfortunately, in America every day. This was about an extraordinary inequity in the application of the law and the misapplication of the presumption of innocence. That who was worthy to be given the presumption of innocence in this case? The man standing over the dead kid with the candy, or the kid on the ground. And what we saw was that the man standing over the dead body was allowed to walk into a police station, give a statement, not even take toxicology, just nothing, and walk out of there and go home and sleep in his bed. Right. And that's what outraged people.
Okay, let's take another break. Let's come back. We'll hear more audience questions on this explosive case.